So for me, reflective practice was it was really a good opportunity to be able to think about my own style and my own approach as a leader, as a manager, but even just my own individual approach to my own work. And by reviewing, writing up the learning logs regularly every week or every session, and then being able to go back to them when I was reviewing the following session and writing my learning logs for subsequent sessions. One of the things, for instance, that really stood out for me was that I was able to see that I'm a worrier when I reflect and I think about my own practice or think about future practice and changes to practice. Um, I seem to be focusing more on the what ifs and the possibilities of things that sometimes don't pan out. So while it was good to try and, you know, prepare for certain situations as a manager, it also wasn't very healthy, and it was wasting a lot of my time being having to worry about things. And so for me, the whole concept of reflective practice and being able to identify certain specific areas where you can change what you're doing in your daily life, or even the way that you think, was really important. And the learning logs were just invaluable for that.
I guess don't put it off. It was something that I did, and I regret it really. I felt if I was going to do it again, I would say to try and carve out some time in your busy schedule to do the work. The longer you leave it after each session, the harder it is to remember what does this note mean or that kind of thing. So I would definitely say at the beginning of the course, so like now, plan some time in your diary once a month and just put it in. Once it's there, no meetings will get booked and it'll just happen in theory. The other thing I'd say is probably don't be afraid to admit when you're maybe not that great at something that you do that's part of your job, because it's a learning experience as well. So in acknowledging that you're not that great at it, it's a chance for you to grow and develop and get better. And then maybe try and take on board as much as you can at the time. But if you're able to, during those sessions each month, go back to previous sessions as well, because you find that your thought process has moved on, or you've learned something else that then sheds a new light on those things. So definitely don't just do it for that month and then just leave it till the end. Like, go back and revisit them, because your thinking definitely changes, and then that's all part of the process as well, like showing how your thinking has evolved throughout each one. um and then there's another one is probably throughout the course you'll get ideas on things you could try with your team, and you should be trying to do those as you go along. But also at the end of the course, something I did was went back through all the learning logs and wrote a list of like things that I really had wanted to do but didn't get a chance. So then that became like a to-do list for me, which I really love, a to-do list. But I then took that to my PDR and discussed it with my line manager, and we put a plan in place to do some of them. So it really helped, that theory of on the course, taking it and putting it into practice in my PDR was really helpful.
Yeah, so when we're talking about reflective practice, for me, it was about thinking about the environments that you're currently in, but also the environments that you've been in before as well. So when you are learning, it's not just about what's happening to you or what's happening to your line reports right now. We're trying to think of it of more of a holistic picture. So do think about your experience as a manager right now, absolutely, and try and apply your learning to that situation. But also reflect on your own previous experiences as either a manager or indeed as a line report, and think about the different times that you've been in various situations and how the ideal situation would have been. What would have been the ideal response? Also, think about what the actual response was and why that was a good or bad thing as well. So, it's all about taking in quite a number of different experiences and slightly moving away from the work environment. Don't forget that as a manager or as a leader, that empathy and understanding is really, really important. So it's not just about thinking about the work environment, but listen to what your friends say about their work environments. Think about your colleagues as almost as people that you would support. So think about it as a sort of a holistic picture. Like I said, it's not just about your current situation, It's about everything that's going on around you and where you can get that influence in your actions.
For me, the real benefit of the Management Essentials programme is in being able to relate your learning to your role and to use it to become more effective and more confident. I would encourage new participants of the programme to make some time after each session to absorb what you've learned and to think about how you can integrate your new skills and knowledge into your day-to-day work.
For me, primarily, I think, comparing the difference between online and face-to-face sessions, whereas in a face-to-face session, we'd only have, you've got the facilitator and either colleagues are talking and we're in a breakout group or on a table and we're just having conversations with each other. In a virtual world, it's not just about the verbal conversations that we're having with each other in a breakout group, for instance, but there's also typing going on in the chat. And so you've got this information coming in from all sorts of different directions at you in a virtual world. And the more I think about it, the more I think that preparing yourself before the session and doing your pre-work so that you're positioned in the most informed way possible that you can, because I must admit, I won't admit to it, but I may know someone who before in face-to-face sessions may not have always done the pre-work and in the session itself was quickly flipping through the reading and trying to see what should have been read before. And that's just not, feasible in a virtual world when you're getting hit with the chat and also the talking. It's the more informed you are, the more you've been able to take time to really go through, engage with, and absorb the resources beforehand, the better benefit you can get from engaging in a virtual session.
So when I did it, obviously it was all in person, but I think the principle is the same. It's a safe space to talk about things. So try and offer your take on things whenever you can. Especially online, because it's so easy to just sit there with your camera off because you hate looking at yourself for that long or whatever. But I found it so helpful when others would talk about their roles and their problems, because it made me realise that it wasn't just me struggling with those things, but it's always healthy to hear someone else's take on a subject. So.
Yes, I think the key thing when attending virtual programs is that it's very easy to get distracted. And that's because we are now becoming expert multitaskers in terms of talking to people on Teams, on emails, on texts, and all the rest of it. And I think what we really need to value out of a Management Essentials program is being in the moment and being present and giving value to yourself in terms of giving yourself that time to be present and in the moment and learning. And also to make sure that you afford other people the attention that you would want to be afforded if you were talking. So instead of getting distracted by an email when it's not something you're interested in, be present, be in the moment, turn your emails and your phone off, try not to multi-screen, and just really make sure that you get the value out of giving up your time. If you try and do too much, then you're actually not doing anything to the full extent that it could be done. So yeah, and I guess it's a mindfulness technique, really, in anything. It's be present.
In order to get the most out of the programme, it's important to participate in discussions and activities during the sessions. Discussions with fellow participants can help to cement your learning and also to see things from different perspectives. Interacting in a virtual environment can be daunting for some, but you'll get out what you put in, and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone really helps you to develop and to grow.
I think just trying to engage in different articles from different sources is helpful, because I found some aspects of online resources to be a bit cliched, and I wanted something a bit more tangible or practical. Other people really like a lot of the soft approach to things, whereas I always like to see something tangible. I'm a bit of a pragmatist. So I really liked TED Talks. I thought they were really insightful and useful. Not just the talks themselves, but also how to present. I thought it was really good. The university's got a great range of resources as well. And I found that the recent links with LinkedIn Learning were good. because I was already using LinkedIn, and I used LinkedIn to read what other leaders and experts were doing across different sectors. And I think we can find ourselves slightly siloed in a higher education sector because we're a large organization, that we don't often look outside of that for influence. So I found that LinkedIn was a really good place to get insight about how people were approaching new challenges and opportunities.
The supplementary resources recommended throughout the programme will help to enhance your learning in your own time and provide an opportunity to explore topics that are of particular interest to you in more depth. I discovered some really useful resources throughout the programme, and I've actually referred back to those since then and have recommended them to colleagues too. I would encourage you to take some time to explore the resources available and to keep them handy to refer back to in future.
You can learn from my mistakes, so don't do what I did. I was always so busy and thought, oh, I'll do that tomorrow, but there was always something more important. I didn't prioritise the time in my diary correctly for reflection and submission of the learning logs each month, and I think that as a result of that, it wasn't my best work, really. I definitely could have done better because that chance for feedback, it was a much smaller window, and I just wish that I'd done that differently. So that's one thing I could definitely say. Like, don't be like me and try and plan things in advance so that you've got that time to do that. But mostly, enjoy it. Like, those learning logs are for you to show how your thought process has changed across each one as well. So I've learned so much about myself and my role and my team since doing the course, and it really helped. Self-awareness is definitely the biggest thing I've taken away from the course.
Yeah, so the learning logs are really important. And what I did find is if I didn't use the learning log within a day or two, then I found it a lot harder. It was far more work trying to do a learning log a week later than it was doing it on the day. So if anybody is sitting there thinking, the learning logs, I haven't got time to do that, I would just implore you, at least on the day, write yourself some bullet points about how you felt, what you've learned, 3 or 4 bullet points to try and frame a paragraph that can come later. But those bullet points on the day, alongside any notes that you've taken in the session, will really help you jog your memory and make sure that you're getting the right experience down. And then obviously, once you have more time, you can go back, flesh them out. And there's nothing stopping you as well going back to previously submitted learning logs and reflecting over what you've written down and seeing if your sort of attitude or position has changed recently from what you have learned as well. So do it as soon as possible. If you haven't got time, write yourself some bullet points and then go back to it, and always use the learning logs as a reflective practice.
I found the learning logs to be a really valuable tool for reflecting on what I learned during each of the development days and to think about how this connected to other reading and learning that I'd done. Crucially, how I would put my learning into practice. I've actually revisited these logs since then as I've done other management and leadership development work, and I've continued to develop on my knowledge and experience. I think that spending time reviewing and reflecting on your learning and planning out how you'll put it into practice really is key to making the most of the programme.